Dear educators, merhaba. I am honored to speak at this seminar. Ever since the publication of my first novel, Kralic, Kurtarmak, I have been observing the Turkish education scene with keen interest. I have learnt much about Turkey thanks to the kind people at my home publisher, Güneşi Kitapları. Over the years, I have received letters and messages from individual children and entire classes who wrote to tell me how my stories have affected them. I have combined this information with my own experience as a university professor in order to learn how storytelling shapes our understanding of social life and nature. When I was a child in the former Soviet Union, my mother brought me a copy of Astrid Lindgren's Pippi Longstocking. I was fascinated by Pippi's reaction to a mathematics problem given to her by a teacher. Quote, Gustav was with his schoolmates on a picnic. He had a quarter when he started out and 7 cents when he got home. How much did he spend? Yes, indeed, said Pippi, and I also want to know why he was so extravagant, and if it was pop he bought, and if he washed his ears properly before he left home. Pippi made the dry math social by turning it into a story. She included questions of social standards and values, excessive spending, and personal hygiene. She wanted detail of daily human life. Was it pop that Gustav bought? Suddenly, the seemingly irrelevant math came alive. It was funny and fun. It was about a real boy called Gustav, and I wanted to know more about him. The math problem was now interesting, and Pippi Longstocking became my teacher. Storytelling is part of us as a species. We are not just Homo sapiens, wise man, but also Homo narrans, storytelling man. Human beings are hypersocial, and we have always loved stories as a way to process and model our social lives. From the first myths and legends told around ancient fires to today's blockbuster films, storytelling is a language into which we can translate almost anything. Storytelling is the socially relevant context that can turn mathematics into an adventure capable of captivating the learner's attention. I discovered this for myself as a young parent when my math-averse son Alex suddenly didn't mind math. This happened when I recalled Pippi Longstocking's lesson from my own childhood and decided to present math problems to my son as a story. This story was about a queen in need of rescue from an evil sorcerer's dungeon. This eventually turned into the mathematical quest by 3 child protagonists in Kralic, Kurtarmak. This book has been used by teachers worldwide to turn the classroom into a castle full of magic and thrills. Every formula and equation is underpinned by social questions such as justice, friendship, trust, etc. When the equation x plus y times 2 equals 42 becomes the key to rescuing the captive queen, the child readers want to help. And most importantly, they want to know what happens next. I'm a professor of German. When I use a German love song to illustrate the conjugation of German verbs, I have my students sing along. The dry German verbs are now part of a social experience, part of a story. This happens because the song speaks to the learner's emotions and aspirations. This socialization of seemingly dry learning material is well illustrated by the Wason selection task from psychology. 4 cards with letters and numbers are presented to subjects who must solve a logical pattern puzzle. In this socially irrelevant context, the success rate is low. But when the same task is presented as a social situation, where the solution is sought in the context of human interaction, the success rate improves tremendously. This is what we must harness as educators, and this is why books can play such an important role in motivating young minds to learn. Stories are about problem solving, something I have tried to emphasize in my own books. In my geographical puzzle novel, Haritada Kaybolmak, I deal with the wonderful diversity of our planet as a problem-solving adventure. At the same time, I combine geographic knowledge with one of the key conundrums of the human condition, age and aging. In my humorous novel, çocuğa, the problem-solving approach is applied to a political context. Here, the misuse and abuse of power are explored as part of an adventure inspired by Franz Kafka's novel Metamorphosis. In my books, children are the heroes of problem-solving, as is the case in most children's stories. Children, who often feel weak and helpless in a world controlled by adults, must be made to feel empowered and capable of overcoming obstacles. They must see themselves in what they are reading. Recently, I published a new novel with kitaplarının entitled Hikâyelerin. It is based on a real historical event that took place in the Canadian Rocky Mountains in 1903. In the middle of the night, an enormous rock slide from a nearby mountain buried many sleeping people in a mining town called Frank. Today, the town of Frank has a memorial museum, a silent testament to this tragedy. So I decided to write a story about a girl called Cassandra who lives in a similar town in the Rocky Mountains. Cassandra learns that nearby Hanging Mountain is going to collapse. She tries to warn everyone about the danger, but her warnings are rejected, largely because Hanging Mountain is a natural wonder. It hangs over the town at an incredible angle and attracts thousands of tourists. Because this brings in a lot of money, the townspeople feel threatened by Cassandra's warnings. They turn on her and on her family, and the novel is about Cassandra's struggle to save an entire town caught up in its own greed. Cassandra's name comes from the ancient Greek and Anatolian mythology, the tales of Troy at war with the Greeks. You will recall the Trojan horse, a wooden structure with Greek soldiers hiding inside in front of Troy's gates. The Trojan priestess Cassandra warns the Trojans about the danger of the wooden horse, but she is not believed, and the wooden horse is taken into the city. At night, the Greeks come out of the horse and tragedy ensues. In Sevdirmek, I wanted to highlight our predatory attitude toward nature. Is nature just a tool to be used for our goals, such as tourism and industry? The natural disaster threatening the town in the Canadian mountains suggests that we are not outside of nature. Disrespecting nature is a recipe for disaster, as we can see from the ecological crisis engulfing the world today. The second theme in Sevdirmek is the power of conviction. In mythology and in my book, Cassandra is unwilling to yield to social pressure. She insists on the truth and is willing to face persecution and ostracism, so long as she can be honest with herself. In my book, the child Cassandra turns out to be more mature than the blind adults around her. She is helped by friends, but in the end, it is Cassandra's courage and perseverance that we must admire the most. This year, my next novel will appear in Turkey with kitaplarının. It too is about problem solving, this time in the context of global warming. It is the sequel to Haritada Kaybolmak and features the same protagonists as well as a new female character. The adventure is about the rising ocean levels on Earth. This book will offer teachers and pupils an opportunity to consider the challenges facing humanity today. I want to express my admiration for you, educators, for your dedication and for the important work that you do every day. The educator's task is similar to the aim of good stories, not necessarily to provide definitive answers to all problems, but always to ask probing questions about human life and the world around us. I hope that in my books I have posed some of those questions, and bright young minds will hopefully come up with possible answers. Thank you for your attention. Teşekkür ederim, and best wishes for health from London, Ontario, Canada.